Hey, what's going on, nerds? Welcome back. This is No Demos, episode 4, and today we're going to be taking a look at one of the coolest fuzzes ever made, one of the most mysterious, and one of the most infamous pedals I've ever featured on the Tome Machines blog, and that is this, the Sam Ash Fuzz-Stainer. You may have seen it, you may have a clone, you may have played one, heard one. This is an original in all of its grimy yellow sticker label weed whacker paint job glory. So I don't want this video to be like 3 hours long, so I'm going to try to breeze through some things. I'm going to put links in the description of the old posts that I've done on this, so if you want a little more detail, a little more background, you can go there. But basically I want to do this episode today to hopefully suss out some more information. I'm going to present a couple things that I hadn't before, but also maybe this will attract somebody who actually knows about these. Maybe you worked at Sam Ash in New York in the 70s and you remember when this came out. You remember using it, selling it. Maybe you own one. Maybe you still own one. This video is hopefully for you, so we'll go into it. Sam Ash has a little bit of a history with fuzz. All of them, except this that I'm aware of, were an OEM situation where they had another company who was making another pedal and they essentially paid them to slap the Sam Ash name on it and they sold it in their stores. And that was a pretty common practice in the late 60s and throughout the 70s. You'd see that quite a bit. So that's no surprise. This, though, appears to be something different. It feels and seems as though this was actually made inside an actual Sam Ash store. And from the two stories that I've heard about people who have purchased theirs from somebody else who was original owner, is that they were purchased at the 48th Street location in New York. They were being made. Somebody in the back was actually sitting there soldering these pedals together and they were making them. So obviously I don't know the logistics or the what's and the hows and the whys of that, but it does illuminate maybe a possible origin story for the Fuzz-Stainer. Now what's interesting, and again you can read my old blog posts on this, but my first interaction was this pedal right here, which I won on an eBay auction having no idea what it was. It looked old, it looked like possibly it was a fuzz. When I got it in, it sounded amazing. Made a couple posts online and we put our heads together and figured out it was a Sam Ash Fuzz-Stainer. You can actually even see a little spot of the blue paint sticking out from the red, which is obviously exactly the same as that. So in addition to this one, there's really only one other one that existed that I knew of, and that was from Matt Wright of Wright Sounds. He obviously made the Fuzz-Stang, which was a clone of his Fuzz-Stainer. And for a long time, that was the only one in existence that still had the label and everything on it. I lucked out a few months back and found this. Had a little back and forth with the owner. We made a deal, and now it is here. So, like I said, here it is. A couple interesting things. You'll see it says Mark II on here. Is there a Mark I? Is there a Mark III? We actually had a little confusion with this one. It really didn't get cleared up until I got this, which was that if we open this up and look inside, you'll see a couple things. You see a couple open holes on the PCB, and you see right here this internal trim pot. When we were going through this on free stomp boxes, it was suggested to me that this is a modified version of a previous circuit, mostly because of what you see here. And so if this is a Mark II, could this be a Mark III? And the one that Wright Sounds had posted pictures of, he never posted pictures of the full internal components, so it was hard to tell exactly what was going on in there, but his also said Mark II on the label. So was this a Mark III? Now, reason I say it was confusing up until a few months ago is because I got this in, and when I open it up, look at the inside. You see no open holes. You see no trim pot. If this is a Mark II, right? That would clear it up that this would be possibly a Mark III, because look how different they are. Even just the layout. But it's clearly the same PCB. So they're made to be the same pedal, but this one seems to be a modified version of this. This one's basically stuck where it's at, fuzz-wise. This one, if I adjust that trim pot, I believe what it does is it biases that transistor. I could be wrong. You can tell me that. But it changes the whole tone of the fuzz. This will actually give you a range of from the most gated, zippery, textural fuzz all the way to Fuzz Face meets Big Muff on the other end. And this one's very amazing sounding. Not that this isn't, but it is what you get, right? So this one sits more on that Fuzz Face spectrum, kind of on the thicker end. You don't get the gating really with this one. This one is super loud. Another funny difference between these two is that the tone control, which is both of these, they go in opposite directions from each other. So I guess, you know, that can be an easy wiring scenario. The same thing with the drive knob up top. They both go in opposite directions. So in this one, you turn it up to the right, and in this one, you turn it up to the left. Another big difference between the two is that in my newer one, you have this big boost of volume on one end of the tone knob. It dips down pretty big, and then a big boost on this end, and essentially just cuts off the highs. Whereas on this one, it almost acts as a notch filter, and you don't get that huge volume dip as you're turning it. So this one's actually pretty interesting. And again, this is super cool too, just not quite as versatile. So I could see maybe if they wanted to modify it. Now, I'm still thinking the red one isn't a Mark III, and I thought that right up until I actually saw the internal of the one that Right Sounds had. Funny enough, literally the day that I got this, posted pictures of it on my Instagram, he put his up for sale, his original, and a good friend of mine purchased that. So I was actually able to get to see the internals of it. And I noticed a couple things. Number one is that the circuit board itself was flipped the opposite direction. And number two, if you take a look at it, it looks like a perfect mixture of this pedal to this pedal. It looks like a transition between the two if you look at the circuit boards. So I'll throw up a picture of that here so you can see what I'm talking about. So typically in the fuzz and things that are in a production line, I guess, I would think that what you're seeing there is a transition going from one to the next. But when it comes to this, I don't feel that way. I actually feel like the red pedal is also a Mark II because the Right Sounds version is a Mark II. My red one has no label, but because this says Mark II, I'm going to guess they're all Mark IIs. There might not even be a Mark I. Mark I, here's my theory. In 1969-70, Sam Ash started selling a pedal called the Fuzzola, and the Fuzzola was simply a Univox Unifuzz relabeled for Sam Ash. Around the mid-70s, they came out with a pedal called the Fuzzola 2. Now, the Fuzzola 2 was just a rebranded Gen Jumbo Fuzz, so it had nothing to do with the original Fuzzola. I have a feeling that Sam Ash, calling this the Mark II, actually is playing off the Sam Ash Fuzz Boxx, which came out in 1967. And I have a feeling they're referring to that as Mark I. Around 73, 74, when I think this came out, those would have just stopped being in production. So that's my guess here as to what's going on with the Mark II. There's no Mark III, there's no Mark I. This is what it is. Now, here's the new bit of information. So about 2 months ago, a little Boxx, little kind of plug-in effect showed up on Reverb, and it was called the Sam Ash Booster Box. I had never seen one before. I thought that was really interesting. And about 2 hours later, another one appeared online. And what was cool was the other one that appeared had this sticker on the back. And if you look at that sticker, which I'm going to post a picture of, I don't have a great image of it, so I've taken it. A friend of mine actually was able to help and kind of zoom in and figure out probably some of what the writing says on it. But what the sticker essentially reveals to me is that they made that booster box in store in Sam Ash. It was sold at a specific location. And probably the biggest clue we have to go off of is the control label, which I can clearly read the name Isaac. So if that means anything to you, if you know or worked with somebody named Isaac in Sam Ash on 48th Street, and you know who that is, let me know. Maybe reach out to them, because I have a feeling that if Isaac knows about the booster box, then he also knows about the Fuzz-Stainer. Now, one more thing to point out about that sticker is if you look at what it says, the model number, it looks like it says ISP B20T. Now, that might not mean anything to you, and initially it didn't really mean anything to me, but on the inside of the Fuzz-Stainer, on the circuit board, what I always thought it said was 1SAFZ, and I was taking that as meaning Mark 1 Sam Ash Fuzz-Stainer. But now I look at the sticker on the bottom of the booster box, and it says model ISP B20T, right? So maybe that 1 is also an I, and if that's the case, they're using that I, or maybe it's a 1 in both scenarios. But they both start with the same kind of configuration model-wise. And I'm sure if I were able to look at other things, there might be a Sam Ash amplifier. I don't know. There was probably other products that they were making in-house and selling at the store that have that same delineation, I guess. So what I'm getting from this sticker from the booster box isn't that it's amazing to find another pedal from Sam Ash, but what I'm getting is actually that it really seems like they were being made in-house. And if that was being made in-house, then this was probably being made in-house, being sold either exclusively out of the 48th Street location or maybe one other one. But that would explain quite a bit with this. It explains its rarity. It explains the label on here, how it just seems like it was printed on a yellow sticker and slapped on a bud box. It explains quite a bit. So what it does not explain, though, unfortunately, is who did make these. Who was sitting around making this pedal? Why are they all slightly different from each other? At least the 3 that we've seen. Could it be that my red box and that the Right Sounds version, could it be that those originals did come later after this, but more it was being modified as they were being made? Throwing that trim pot in there gives you a wider range to tune the fuzz to exactly where you want it, to get the sound that you want out of it, as opposed to making sure that all your components are perfect every time. So it could be a workaround for that. That's what I'm thinking. But again, I don't know who invented it. I don't know who was making them, how long they were available, where they were actually available. I can only speculate as of now. Other than that, the last thing that I do want to mention is a possible connection between this pedal here and another pedal that has a very similar configuration with the knobs, and that's the Frogg Micro Fuzz. Now, I've never actually seen one of these, a physical unit. I've only seen pictures from this specific ad. For some reason, some versions of the ad have shrunk the image down and it makes everything look skinnier. But I actually have an image, a version of the ad where it's a normal width. And I found a little article from, I believe, the Stompbox book, the 90s version. And in there is a interview with Fox and kind of the team from Fox, and they talk about starting Frogg in the 70s. In that, they talk about the Micro Fuzz and how it was built in a bud box, and how essentially they got a cease and desist from MXR, which, funny enough, we heard the same thing from DOD. Apparently they were throwing those cease and desists around all over the place back then. And so they stopped making it. So there's only a few of those that are out there. Like I said, I've never seen one. I don't even think it says Frogg on it. I believe it just says Micro Fuzz. Problem with trying to search Micro Fuzz on the internet is now you have tiny little fuzzes all over the place, and that's all that comes up. So if you happen to own one of those, a Frogg Micro Fuzz, definitely let me know. But I have a sneaking suspicion if you were to peek inside a Frogg Micro Fuzz, it might be a Fuzz-Stainer. Now that's purely speculative, and obviously this knob configuration isn't completely owned by Sam Ash, so I don't really know what the deal is. If that is the case, I don't really know which one came first. I'm gonna guess this, just because of its homemade kind of nature, but who knows? Who knows what was going on with that? I will say, point out, even has the same knobs. So again, just throwing out some more things into the ether. Hopefully it picks up something. Maybe you learned something new from watching this. Like I said, maybe you have experience or you own or know something about this. Please reach out to me. Either hit me up in the comments or go into the description and you can find my info in there. And we'll start piecing this little mystery together. All right. We'll see you on the next one.